This week, we're talking about Mary, blessed among women. Now, one of the things I want to point out is we are coming from our basics here. My study my lens that I'm looking through is more of a Protestant Reformed theology. And all that simply means is I'm not holding on to tradition. I'm not holding on to myth, legend. I'm not holding on to any sort of statues or symbols or anything like that. My theology is based on the scriptures. Now, if you have a background that you're into, I've got a friend of mine, she is very much into, she likes to see the beautiful crosses and the ornate architecture and whatever. That doesn't, okay, fine, but you need Jesus and you can have that architecture stuff, right? So the architecture doesn't replace Jesus. So I don't disparage you if you're like, I just worship better in that environment. Fine. Doesn't hurt me, okay? I want you to focus primarily on Jesus, though, and on the scriptures themselves, not, well, this is the way we've always been done it. That's a deal breaker, all right? So I'm coming to you from a Protestant Reformed theology, but I also, Jen and I were talking earlier, I also really feel like because we kind of stiff arm some of the traditional orthodoxy of people that may fall underneath, let's just say like the Catholic or the Eastern Orthodox type churches who kind of venerate and lift up Mary pretty high. I almost feel like as Protestant Reformed theology, we're almost like, no, not Mary. Like we're almost kind of, but the Bible specifically talks about her and this whole process. And so I think she's blessed among women. The angel calls her out and says, hey, you're going to be amazing part of God's plan. So I think we really need to come into a place where we appreciate her role without, even she's like, hey, this is the Son of God. I still need the Son of God, right? And then you're getting into like, oh, Mary, did you know, that your baby boy would one day walk on water? And she didn't know he was going to walk on water, but she knew he was the Son of God because there was proclamation. So that song kind of gets me whenever I hear it. So we're going to start in Luke chapter 1. We're going to start in verse 1, okay? And I'm going to kind of overshadow or kind of skim over this first session about John the Baptist. It's important that we understand this is happening concurrently, the same time as Jesus, but this is not the primary passage that we're looking at, okay? So Luke chapter 1, verse 1, whereas many, and by the way, I'm using the modern English version like I always do. If you don't have a favorite, do you need a Bible? Because we got some right over there. Just go run over there and grab one. I'm using the modern English version. If you have a different version that is your favorite, I don't care. That's fine. It doesn't give me a heartache. But if you don't have a favorite version, keep looking around until you find one that's your favorite. Like there's different ways. It comes across in different ways that you might like it better than, you might be a King Jameser, or you might be an English Standard Version, or you might be, I do modern English version, all right? So whatever. So Luke 1:1. Whereas many have undertaken to write a narrative of those things which are most surely believed among us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word, comma, I'm going to stop right there. Remember, there's 4 Gospels. Who knows the Gospels? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. How many were with Jesus?
Oh. How many were?
Of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, how many were with Jesus? Matthew and John. Mark and Luke weren't with him. And we also understand that.
I know they weren't apostles, but like they didn't know him.
No, they weren't there during that time. So whenever
They never met him.
No, when you look here in verse 2, it says, just as they were handed down to us, including myself, Luke, who's writing this account, by those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. So Luke is telling us, I wasn't there. I'm taking your account and your account. So here's the deal. I asked you about 9/11 before we started, right? You were at court, you were training, you were driving to school or dropping somebody off or work or whatever it was. You were going to work. I was going to college. So that was 20 something years ago now. Now that there's 20 years, does that mean I can't I can't trust that you knew where you were on that day? Or can I trust that I know you were there? Can I trust that you know? Okay. So we're within this window of time after Jesus where we, it was a big deal for you to be in court, I'm sure. And so what this does is it helps us to understand the context of Jesus and the events around him. Just because Luke wasn't there, he was there within months, years after Jesus. Okay? So does that mean that the eyewitness accounts are not valid then? Because I just asked you, I didn't know that you went to court, but I mean, you're like, no, I was there, and because of this charge, and you know, I can't remember the judge's name, but the attorney's name was like. You could probably give me all sorts of accounts, right?
Yeah.
You could chase them down. I know, but you could chase it down in your memory and start pulling facts out, right? And I could value those because I know that happened, and even though it happened 20 years ago, 20 years ago, it's a fact.
Yeah.
And so Luke is telling us, here's what went down. I wasn't there, but I'm using the eyewitnesses of those people who were. And so I'm going to write the information down for you. So there are people who will try to disparage Mark and Luke as gospel accounts because they're like, oh, well, they weren't there with Jesus. I'm like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but they were there right after Jesus, and they were talking to the other people. And you don't think you'd remember Jesus like literally making a lame guy walk, or a blind man see, or multiplying fishes and loaves of bread, walking on water? You don't think you'd remember those things? Yeah, you'll remember those things, okay? So, verse 3, it seemed good to me also, having accurately investigated all the things from the very beginning, to write you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you might know the certainty of the things which you have been told. So, we don't know for certain. I don't know for certain if Theophilus was an actual person or if that's more of like a young person in the faith. Kind of I'm going to rewrite everything, kind of start from the beginning, so that way you have a good account of everything that's going on, young person in the faith. Kind of youngster, right? Theophilus. So I don't know if that's actually the person's name. Yeah, champ. All right. So I don't know if that's the actual person's name or if that is a separate item. Okay. Or if that's just hey, champ, listen to this. Okay. So we go into verse 5 now. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah. And his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Now, what do we know about Aaron? That's not in the New Testament. Where's Aaron from? Way back to Exodus. Okay, we did Exodus last year and finished earlier this year, Exodus. And Aaron is the line of the priests. That was supposed to be the genealogical, just like the king, his son, the prince, will become the next king, et cetera, et cetera. Aaron, his son, was supposed to be the next high priest of the nation of Israel going through. Okay, and they called that the Levitical line, right? That's where we get Leviticus from. Here is the line of the priests, and here's what they should know regarding when sin's coming. Then, hey, you lied about getting a chocolate shake, and you actually gave me a strawberry shake. So that's worth like one turtle dove of a sin, okay? But him being in court for assault, that's worth 2 oxen in sin offering or whatever. So it lays all that out in Leviticus, okay? And that's because those are the ones who are supposed to be carrying out that judgment and that weight of the sin between the people and God and being the priest. So we're getting information, right? When we're just reading, but we're getting information as we go through here. We're data mining. Okay, it says they were both righteous before God. Does that mean perfect? No, it means that they were working diligently to prove themselves righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blamelessly. So some good people. Okay, these are not. They're not. Probably not. I'm gonna take a wild guess and probably not in court for assault. Okay. Yeah. But they had no children because Elizabeth was barren, and they both were now well advanced in years. Does this sound familiar at all? The Bible has cyclical stories. Does this sound familiar? What does this remind you of? Abram and Sarah, right? Except we don't know that Zechariah and Elizabeth were promised a child, But here they are, advanced in age. They don't have a child. And so one of the things that I'm going to point out tonight is the difference between Abraham, or Abram, before his name changed, and Zechariah in this story. So we're going to go, and I'll talk about that in a little while. Verse 8. Now, while he served as priest before God, when his division was on duty, according to the custom of the priest office, his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. If you remember back in our Exodus study, we had, when you walked in there, you had a table of showbread on the right. That's a table, and it had 12 flat loaves of bread to represent the 12 tribes. And there was a place to the brazen or brass wash basin was out front, and there was a candlesticks over here, and there was a thing in the middle that you put the incense on there to make a pleasing fragrance for God, basically to cover over our sin because our sin stinks. And so his job was to go. That's out front, yeah. Yeah, so they had a huge barbecue pit out front, and they had the slaughter process. And remember, the priests, they were pretty jacked up because they were picking up like quarters of the ox and stuff. They did. Some of the portion, Exodus tells us some of the portion was due to the priests as part of their pay, was some of the meat, yeah. And so, but you can imagine, I just slaughtered a cow, an ox, and I got to put this thing up on here to burn it or / cook it. It's like, man, these guys are just jacked up. And then, talk about bodybuilding. I mean, these guys, high protein diet, lots of exercise. I mean, these guys are killing it, right? So probably Zechariah, he's one of probably dozens that are serving at this time. If you can imagine, every Sabbath, so every Saturday, if you lived within a 10 to 30 mile radius around Jerusalem, you're like, well, hey, it's time to go to church. Let's hop on, on the road and let's walk on down. Don't forget, we got to drag 3 goats and 2 chickens and 1 turtle dove or whatever the sacrifices were. And you hear this, all these animals like making their way to the temple. And then there's this great sacrifice all day long, Saturday, all day long, sacrificing animals. And man, there's just blood all over the place, and there's guts, and it's pretty gross. It's pretty grotesque if you think about it. And that's the way God sees our sin, is there's just kind of mayhem and carnage everywhere. All right. And so we see here that Zechariah is serving. He's not out front doing the slice and dice thing. He's inside. He's lighting the incense. All right. So that's where we are. And according to the custom of the priest's office, his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. Verse 10, and the whole crowd of people were praying outside at the hour of incense. So there's a crowd gathered outside. So conceivably, if you've ever worked retail, like I waited tables, and I also sold luggage or whatever, and you've got your store, like you open the gate, and you go inside and you close it, because you're going to go in there. I got to turn the light on, turn on the computer, turn on the credit card scanner machine. I got to make sure that the back room's lit, make sure that we turn on the overhead music for Christmas carols or whatever's supposed to be playing. And then you're like, okay, it is 9 o'clock. Everybody come in, right? So we see him getting ready. There's a crowd outside. He's lighting the incense. Verse 11, boom, an angel of the Lord appeared to him standing on the right side of the altar of incense. Do you think he's in that particular place where he's just like, I'm here by myself. Let me just stop and just pray and talk. I don't think that's the case. It's possible. What I see is there's a crowd waiting outside. My job's to go in and light the incense. I've got things. I'm doing things. I'm doing. Boom, angel. Whoa, that's gonna stop me in my tracks. Okay, so
Probably scary looking, right?
and every single time an angel shows up, they're like, chill out, peace, be still, like just relax, everyone chill out. So we'll see what he says here. It says, standing on the right side of the altar, and when Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. And the angel in verse 13, what did he say? Do not fear, Zechariah. I'm not here. I'm not the bad guy. Don't fear, for your prayer has been heard. So he has been praying. I don't know about that day, possibly, but apparently, remember, if you look back here, it said that they were well advanced in years and no child. Back in verse 7, it says, the angel said to him, do not fear, Zechariah, for your prayer has been heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. In Hebrew, that's not John. John, the way that's written, is the Greek version. In the Hebrew version, is Yohanan. Yohanan. And it really has to do more with the Y sound of like Yahweh. Yohanan would be more like God is moving here. So we use John, it just kind of loses its context. But just know that there's an important reason why John is being used here. God doesn't have accidents. Just like Joshua is God saves, and Jesus' name is a derivative of that. It's called Yahashua, which means God is the one who's going to do the saving. So there's a small but important difference here. And so if my name is God is the one who's doing the saving, not God saves, that's like, I'm praying for that. It's like, we have a friend named Faith, right? Her name's Faith. Like, name her, hey, we really want her to have faith or whatever. But anyway, names are important. We're going to get to names in a few minutes and words in a few moments here. Verse 14, you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. Probably because the family's been praying to, hey, we really want Zechariah and Elizabeth to have a baby, man. We're really praying. It'd be really awesome if God blessed them with that. And I think it's also a prophecy of the work that John the Baptist, is what we will end up calling him, is going to be doing in the land, right? So it's kind of twofold there. Verse 15, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from the mother's womb. So that is what we call the Nazirite vow. Not going to go into a whole bunch of information about that right now, but Nazirite vow just means I'm setting this person apart. Samuel from 1 Samuel was under a Nazirite vow. Samson, remember Samson? Samson was under a Nazirite vow. It's basically someone set apart for a special reason to serve God. Verse 16, he will turn many of the sons of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go before him in the spirit and the power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. So we see here, he's preparing a way. Now, there's another verse in the Old Testament, I can't remember where it is right now, and it's not important for today, except for I just want to mention it, is there's this idea that like life is filled with these ups and downs, and actually the middle part of Israel is hilly like this, and it says that he will lay low every hill and build up every valley to make straight the path of the Lord. He's going to prepare the way so that when Jesus comes, it's going to be this boom, getting it done, not going on a long journey hike and going up and down and around. It's boom, it's ready to go. That's the context of that. So we go to verse 18. Zechariah said to the angel, how am I going to know about this? I mean, how's this going to happen, man? I'm really old. For I'm an old man. My wife is well advanced in years. He's saying, listen, I know you want to take your car down to the drag strip and go try to go quarter mile against me, but I'm driving a 1988 GMC Sierra with a V6 engine, and that thing is barely running. How am I gonna race you, man? That thing doesn't have any get up and go. This thing is, I'm old. How are we gonna have a baby here? So he is questioning God's motives, or is he questioning God's ability? His ability. Questioning God's ability, okay? So there's a difference here from what we're going to look at in here in a few moments. He's literally saying, I don't know how this is even possible. I'm very skeptical. You're probably talking to the wrong guy. Like I'm really old, okay? I mean, I'm older than Robbie at this point, okay? So verse 19, the angel answered him and said, I am Gabriel. So he gave his name. It's like, ooh, it's not just I'm an angel of the Lord. Like Gabriel, I think gets like, okay, we're going to go this route. Fine, I'm going to give you my name now. I'm going to step in the box, okay? I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. It's almost like he's chastising him. He's like, all right, time out. All right, message aside, dude, I was the one sent down here to talk to you. You're going to question? Like, I can see him, like, it's almost like a side comment between Zechariah and the angel. And now you will be silent, unable to speak until the day that these things happen, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their season. I'm going to say conjecture on Brad's part. It's not in the scripture inherently, okay? But I'm going to say God allowed Gabriel to shut up his mouth. Gabriel's the one who's having this little side conversation with him. And he's like, I'm going to shut your mouth until all this happens. You'll see. Now, God is the one who ultimately is in charge. He's in the authority. But Gabriel, he's like, I'm telling this message. He's questioning, dude, I am Gabriel. I'm the one that was sent. God said, hey, Gabriel, go down there and tell Zechariah the good news. Thanks, man. All right, bye. I'm here. And you're questioning this? I don't think so, dude. Your mouth is shut up until it happens. That's just the way I read it. Maybe I'm just reading it too dramatically. I'm okay with that because it's still the same message. But that's what I'm seeing as I read through this. All right, so verse 21. The people waited for Zechariah and wondered why he waited so long in the temple. So they're like, dude, we're waiting for you to remember, open shop? We're waiting for you to open shop. All you had to do was light the incense, man. What are you doing? We got a crowd out here. So they're wondering what took so long, right? And when he came out, he could not speak to them. So he comes out, and he's, how'd it go in there, Zechariah? He can't talk. And he probably didn't know American Sign Language. I'm going to take a guess. He could not speak to them. They perceived that he had seen a vision in the temple, for he had made signs to them and remained speechless. I mean, this would probably be a sign. I mean, like, how do you say, like, an angel? How do you, I don't know. It's like one of the weirdest charade games ever. I don't understand, but you get this idea that they think, okay. Something happened in there, dude. Okay, we see you. So verse 23, as soon as the days of his service were fulfilled, he departed to his own home, and after those days his wife Elizabeth conceived, and for 5 months she hid herself, saying, thus the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked on me to take away reproach from among men. Now, for the two that are in the room who are qualified to speak on pregnancy, because frankly, when you first find out you're pregnant, do you run out and tell every single person you know? Why?
Depends on the person.
It depends on the circumstance.
There's people that will want to know first too. Like you don't want to tell everybody first. And sometimes it's because you want to make sure that everything is going to go well.
Aha. So here she is, advanced in age, maybe even perimenopausal or menopausal. Advanced in age. She's pregnant. Oh no. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize this pregnancy. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to stay still. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to do everything I possibly can. And who's going to believe that? I mean, you can start showing in your second, third pregnancy, you start showing like 2 days after you find out you're pregnant. Your first pregnancy can take months before you ever start showing. So the angel is like, you're going to have this baby, but she's like, no one's going to believe. They just think that I had too many pieces of loaves of bread or something, like I gotta make sure that it's actually obvious that I'm pregnant. And so she gets to 5 months and then she's like, okay, I'm still pregnant. And we're halfway. It's awesome. This is actually happening, right? So I think she kind of gets to that point and she says, man, this is really happening. This is awesome. So, and her husband can't talk either. So she's probably like living in like paradise a little bit, So let's go to verse 26. In the 6th month, so 5 months, she's pregnant. In the 6th month of her pregnancy, okay, so she's in what we call the last trimester at this point, okay? The angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. Now, we talked about the lineages in session 1 of this Christmas series. It's Christmas time. We talked about how God said it's thus and such and such and such and then Mary and then Jesus. And if that's not good enough for you, it's Joseph, who's actually not the father, but he gets the paternal nod because he's the man to Jesus, both from the line of the house of David. So God just was like, some people are going to have a big deal because, it wasn't the man's side that was the house of David. How do we know? Like, I fixed that. Well, he actually adopted Jesus. It was actually conceived of the Holy Spirit. Okay, well, great. Mary's from the house of David too. What else do you want? Like, he fixed the glitch. Okay. So here we see that in the 6th month, Gabriel went to Nazareth and she was betrothed. That's a fancy word for engaged, but it's more than just engaged. It's like you're effectively married. You just haven't sealed the deal yet. And you're not living together, that kind of situation. But it's like, this is, legally you are married. Okay. So it's like you got your marriage permit, marriage license, but you haven't had the ceremony yet. You're kind of in that weird window where it's like the law recognizes you as married, but you're not ceremonially married yet. Okay. Still preparing the house for her. Right. So the angel came to her. The virgin's name was Mary, right? And the angel came to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored." Okay. The Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women. So blessed among women, that's tonight's study. So let me go into my notes now. So in the 6th month, who came and visited Mary? Gabriel. Where's Gabriel been before? So apparently this dude's really awesome at baby announcements, right? So Gabriel is back visiting Mary, talking about, hey, you're going to have a baby. Congrats. It's going to be a baby boy. And so we see here in Luke 1:30. So let's get down there. The angel came to her, "Greetings, you are highly favored, blessed among women." When she saw him, she was troubled by his words. Now notice, Mary, did she fall down? Did she tremble? Did she cower? What does it say? Yeah. Mary was pretty baller. Zachariah's like, ah! He's like, no, just peace out. It's cool, man. I'm an angel. I'm here to talk to you. Mary's like, oh, it's an angel. What you got for me, man? She wasn't afraid. So that tells you a little bit about her character, okay? Normally, and back me up on this, when you read the other angel accounts that happen, they're all freaking out. Even when the angels come and talk to the shepherds later on, we'll talk about shepherds next week. When they come talk to them, they're like falling down and worshiping. The angels are like, no, don't worship us. We're here from God. But anyway, we got something to tell you here, right? So there's this idea that Mary, she didn't flinch. She didn't flinch. She's pretty awesome. So, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. Now, that word favor there is the same word that is used later for grace throughout the New Testament. You have found grace with God. If you remember, what is grace? That's fancy talk. What else is grace? Yeah, getting what we or you don't deserve. So, you get a gift. I got a milkshake. Didn't deserve that. I got a milkshake. That was grace. It's a gift. Okay? Now, what I should have gotten was probably some fat removing metabolism pills to help me lose weight, right? But I didn't get what I do deserve, okay? What I should have deserved, I didn't get. So that is mercy, not getting what I do deserve. Okay? So not getting what I do deserve is mercy. All right? Now, there's another one here that's called blessing. And what is blessing?
You're like, no, that's not it. That ain't it.
Well, think about it. Yeah. So a blessing is just above and beyond. Okay? It's above and beyond grace, and it's above and beyond mercy. Because I can get one time for Jen to say, okay, fine, you don't really deserve this, but I'm going to give this to you anyway. I'm going to give you that chance to go bird hunting with the guys. But next weekend, you got to be here. We got to clean the garage or whatever it is. But when she's like, babe, I trust you. I love you. Don't worry about that. You go bird hunting whenever you want to. That's a blessing. It's above and beyond. And she's telling me that right now, right?
And I can read her eye right now.
I can read it in her eyes right now. All right, so the word is grace, right? So we see here in verse 30, but the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. Now, I don't think he was saying do not be afraid because she was cowering. Why is he telling her do not be afraid? What is he about to tell her? Like, hold on, I got some news. You're not married. Just hang in there with me. Good. You guys are following along. Good, I like it. All right, verse 31. Listen, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son and shall call his name Jesus. So in the Greek here, and I'm not a Greek expert, so anybody who's watching this later is going to be like, oh, you totally massacred that. I'm owning up to it right now. I did massacre. I'm not a Greek expert, okay? But the Greek word here for conceive, verse 31, Luke 1:31, the word for conceive here is sulambano. Sulambano. Again, butchered it big time, okay? I'm probably saying it with a Spanish accent because that's the other language I speak, okay? So, sulambano, okay? And that is the word for conceive, but it's also used in other ways. It's also used to mean to seize, as in arrest or in protecting. I'm like, oh, there's a bad guy coming in. Rick. That's the phrasing that's making. And when you think about conceive, what is a woman's womb doing to that child? It's protecting. And that also lends us additional evidence that the scripture points out that that's a life that needs to be protected in that womb. Okay? So, let's go to verse 32 now. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Highest, or the Son of the Most High God, some translations say. Okay? So, it's not just saying he's going to be a pretty good dude. There's some serious claims in here. So, Mary, did you know? Well, yeah, she was just told right here. Yes, she knew. Now, here's what you don't know culturally. Here's what's going on. Who has heard of Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, Nero, all these Caesars from the Roman Empire, right? Well, there were some of these guys that got so backwards and twisted up and like tangled spaghetti bowls of sin that some of them were like, yeah, I killed my own father, but I'm the son of Caesar, so I'm the rightful heir of the Caesar. I'm the rightful thing here. Like just kind of messed up stuff, right? So there was this idea that like some of them were making their own coins and they were putting on their face and they would say, I am the son of Julius Caesar. I'm the son of whatever. Augustus Caesar, I'm this, whatever. So they're trying to make this claim on the power, riding on the coattails of Daddy-O. And here we see the same kind of thought pattern, but the angel says he will be great. He'll be called the Son of the Highest, or the Lord God Most High. So not son of some random dude here on earth, but of the actual God, the Creator. So now that you understand the context of what's being, what they're saying, it's not just like, oh yeah, of course that's Jesus, he's Son of God, but like literally they're saying from a political standpoint, he is the actual heir of God the Creator with all the rights and privileges thereto, given to him. And so he has the right to heir of the throne of God. Pretty amazing stuff. Verse 33. And he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. So if you remember, You have Abraham was later named Abraham. And the reason he was named from Abram to Abraham, you have to have that, you got a popcorn kernel in your throat. Abraham is because they're adding in that Yahweh. So there's a place where he's now saying, I'm now connected with God by my very name. Sarai, Sarai was her name, and she went from Sarai to Sarah. Added her into being named with God, Yahweh. Isn't that cool? All right. So here we see that you will be connected. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever in his kingdom, and of his kingdom there will be no end. So when you are a follower of Jesus, it says the kingdom will be no end. When did Israel oust and remove Roman authority over their land? They never did, right? Yeah, it's a trick question. They never got rid of the earthly authority over them. So in that instance, which kingdom is he talking about? Kingdom of heaven. So we need to make sure that we do the data mining to understand this. Some people will read this, well, of his kingdom there will be no end. There are some people who will take that to mean, well, if Israel is still subject to other authorities, or they're being tormented by the Islamic states around them, or whatever, then the kingdom is not really there yet. It's going to come at some point. They're still looking for the Messiah. They'll even take some New Testament verses and twist them out of context to look for a future Messiah because they don't see Jesus as the one. All right. Verse 34. Then Mary said to the angel, how can this be, since I do not know a man? What does somebody else? Somebody else have a different translation than that? I'm a virgin, right? So the word there is, there's two words in Greek. The second word, it's like kind of almost like in Spanish sometimes. It's like to do not, kind of a reverse syntax. To do not is don't, right? And so here there's a word not after this. But the word that they're talking about here is she actually uses, she says, in your translation it says virgin, but then in the Greek it says aner. A-N-E-R. And that is a male gender person. A person who's a male gender. It says not knowing a male gender person. Yeah. Well, and I make that distinction because here in a few minutes there will be a male and a female version of a word. So it's very clear that it's not, I haven't known a person, but it's specifically a male person because she's a female speaking. So when you have that context, it's not knowing that male person in a sexual way. So is she questioning God's ability? She's not questioning his motives. I don't think she's questioning his ability. I think she's just saying, okay, how is this going to happen? Like, she's probably between 14 and 18 years old here, and she's probably, like you two guys, right? So she's probably between 14 and 18 years old, and she's like, I've never been with a man before in that way. We're not married. How does this work? How is this going to happen? Because, God created from the very beginning male parts and female parts and said, be fruitful and multiply. Like, that's pretty ingrained in human. You don't have to have a whole degree program to know how that works, right? Just things fit together, right? So she's simply saying, how are we going to do this thing, right? How is this going to happen? And there may be in her mind where she's like, okay, well, does that mean, do I need to get with Joseph? Do we need to go ahead and do the ceremony and go ahead and consummate this thing? Or, yeah, yes. Now she's not saying that per se. This is Brad's Brad's thinking pattern here. I'm like, we see here that she's saying the same thing as Zechariah, but she's not questioning, I don't think, God's motive and ability. I think she's just saying, practically, okay, just do I need to just go ahead and we're already betrothed? I mean, do we just do this thing, or like how does this happen, right? Now that's just Brad's conjecture. The scripture doesn't specifically say those words, so don't hear me out of context here. Okay. And it's almost questioning, because remember, she wasn't afraid because she's baller, and she's like, okay, well, if this is what God has for me, like, what's the next step? Like, how do I make this happen? Like, her heart was, I'm ready, right? And so we see here, how can this be, since I do not know a man? I've not known a male gender. And the angel in verse 35 answered her, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the highest, or the Lord God Most High, will overshadow you. Therefore, the Holy One who will be born will be called the Son of God. So in verse 35 here, there's a word that I'd like for us to go over, and it is eperkamahi. Totally butchering the Greek. I don't claim to be a Greek expert, but this is important for us to look at this. In verse 35, there's a word that says eperkamahi, okay? And it means to come upon, like, have you ever been so tired that like you're nodding out like this? Like the sleep is just coming on to you. Like you're like, I need toothpicks to hold my eyes open kind of sleep. You've been there before. Yeah. That is what it means to come upon. Like sleep is coming upon you like that. And so it also means to come upon you or to overtake you like that. And so as the Holy Spirit is going to come upon you in such a powerful way that it's going to be like when you're nodding and you really can't control yourself. It says the Holy Spirit's going to come upon you like that. So that brings you kind of, I can imagine like what that's going to be like, right? Then the next word is dunam. Dunamis. Okay? Dude. Yeah. No, not doo-doo. Like dunamis. Duhas. Oh, yeah. I'm doing Greek, not German. So, and this one means that means it has inherent power residing in the thing. Its very nature, power for performing miracles. So this kind of like overcoming sleep, like it's overcoming you, and it's dunamis is the power residing in its own self. It's power for performing miracles. Those two words are what's being used here. Mary, this power to perform this miracle is going to overcome you and overtake you. So what does that look like? Well, we actually have another example, okay? So before we get to that, there's another word in here. It says episkiadadzo. Again, I'm butchering it. But this one means to overshadow or envelop, like in fog. Have you ever been driving down the street and then you hit a patch of fog and you're like, my headlights are pointless because I literally can't see an inch in front of me. It's just such a that is a thick fog that just envelops the car, right? And so that's what it means by overshadowing or enveloping you, okay? So let's go to Matthew 17:5 for a minute, or Luke 9:34, whichever way you want to go. Matthew 17:5, Luke 9:34, either way. It's a couple of pages over. And actually, we'll come back to Matthew 17:1 or Luke 9:28. Either way, okay? And it's not going to be a word for word exact, but you'll get the basic idea here. And it says, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and brought them up to the high mountain alone. I'm reading out of Matthew in this particular case. And Jesus was transfigured before them. His face shone as the sun, and his garments became white as light. And suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. And then Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make 3 tabernacles. Let's make like 3 tents so that you guys can just chill out. This is cool. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. This is going to be a cool campground, right? But, verse 5 of Matthew 17:5, while he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, enveloped them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." What does that sound like? That's the God, right? God came in the cloud. And it said that the cloud was actually lit up. It was a bright cloud. So, what I want us to take from this is for her to be overtaken, enveloped by a cloud of God is not like some sort of random thing. He has been that way multiple times. You want to actually take it way back. Let's rewind the clock all the way back to the second book of the Bible. What happens in Exodus? He leads the nation of Israel by a pillar of cloud during the day and by a pillar of fire during the night. That sounds like a bright cloud to me. And so we see here that is what's going to overtake you and do this miracle. That would not be foreign to her. She's going to be like, you mean like the same God who led our people out of Exodus in power and did all the miracles? He's going to do a miracle with me? Man, this is awesome. This is so cool. That's going to be great. I'm excited for that, right? So, you're going to call him Jesus. And listen, also, by the way, if you didn't know, your cousin Elizabeth, remember her who's been barren and she's older than you and she's been praying for a long time to have a kid? She's also conceived a son in her old age. And this is the 6th month with her who is declared barren. For with God, nothing will be impossible. Verse 37 is huge. We should all memorize Luke 1:37. Simple verse. Luke 1:37, we should all have memorized. For with God, nothing will be impossible. We can think about the hardest things that we're going through, scary angels showing up, unplanned pregnancies from someone who you're engaged with, but I'm actually not having any interaction with that person. I'm still going to be pregnant. And her response is, okay, I'm in. Let's do it. I don't know. I'm excited. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm in. And so she says in verse 38, Mary said, I am the servant of the Lord. May it be unto me according to your word. So in verse 135, we see here she's saying, okay, let's get down to, so is this okay, I'm asking, I'm in. How's this going to happen? Is this going to be one of those situations where I've got to go and like wait to meet with Joseph after the wedding night, or are we trying to do this thing now, even because we're betrothed, or what's going to happen? And the angel clarified, and then in verse 37, it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course, with God, all things are possible. So yeah, and that pillar of fire and that pillar of smoke, that cloud went into the tabernacle and lit up the tabernacle with fire and smoke. I mean, when he says it's going to envelop you in a bright cloud and do this miracle, she's like, I know exactly who that is. That's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he's going to do a miracle with me. She knows. Okay? So she says, I'm the servant of the Lord. May it be unto me according to your word. Then the angel left from her. So in verse 38 here, it says, I am the servant of the Lord. That Greek word there is doule, not delay, but doule. And that has the same root word as doulos. Have you ever had a pregnancy center or some friends or whatever, and they talk about they have a doula? What is that? Yeah. Are they like in shackles and chains? They're a slave to that person they're helping? But they don't have like...
They don't have shackles and chains, but no, they're there to help and guide you, to help you to breathe,
Right. There are two definitions of the word doula, doulos, doule. Doule is the female version, doulos is the male version. Doula is just a kind of a shortened generic term, and it actually has two definitions. One is a servant or a slave. The other one is what we call a bond servant. And actually, when we look back into the text here, you can go to Romans 1:1. Flip over there real quick. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans. Go to Romans 1:1, and you see Paul here in verse 1. Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ. He uses the same word there. He says, I am a doulos, because he's male. And here we see Mary saying, I'm a doule, a girl servant. It's a bond servant. Somebody who, just like the doula at the birthing center, I place myself under this person to serve them. I humble myself to serve this person, to help her have a baby experience, to help her through this. I'm coaching her with her breathing, with helping her remain calm, with pushing when it's time to push, when relaxing when it's time to relax. I'm helping her, and I'm simply here focused on that person. So Paul says, what does he say in Romans 1? I, Paul, am the servant, or the bond servant. The bond servant is actually the word that Paul uses there. It's a slightly different definition. It's not slave. A bondservant is saying, it would be like Bradford if he was like, hey, Brad, I really like you. You're a really cool guy. You're super handsome. And I really just feel like I want to serve you. And so I am going to do everything that you ask me to do, not because I'm your slave, but because I honor and trust you. I'm going to put myself under your authority and just, you direct me. You direct my life.
I remember that talk.
And so that's what Paul says. I, Paul, the bond servant of Jesus Christ. What's he saying there? He's placing himself, willing, voluntary servanthood underneath the authority of Jesus Christ. So Mary here, what is she saying? I am the servant of the Lord. She's like, I guess I'm a slave. I don't have a choice here. Or is she saying, yeah, let's do this. I submit myself to you, God. I'm here for this. Let's do this thing. Okay. And then we see here, there's another word that she uses. She said, may it be unto me according to your word. That's actually a really long way of saying what the Greek says. And that word is gimomachi. Again, butchered it. Gimomachi. And that actually means come to pass. This is going to come to pass. Let it happen. Let it be as you say. There's another place where that's used in the Bible, and that is in Matthew 6:10. Flip over to Matthew 6:10. Someone read Matthew 6:10.
Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in
Ooh. So let me go back to what the girl says here. She says, may it be unto me according to your word. And Matthew 6:10 says, see how there's a connection? There's the same ideology that connects this. I'm submitting myself to you, God. Let your will be done. And that's the same thing that she says here, as that was what we see in the prayer that Jesus later on, they said, hey, Jesus, can you tell us how to pray? And he includes that in his message when he's telling them how to pray. Isn't that cool? Mary is super important. She is an amazing part of the gospel story. I'm going to finish up talking about her in a second. Mary, I'm going to kind of paraphrase verse 39 here through 44. In those days, Mary arose. She went down there. She saw Elizabeth. And Mary said, oh, Elizabeth, it's me. And when Mary's voice entered into Elizabeth's womb, because I don't know if you know this, Bradford, the babies can hear in there. Okay, so you can like play them rock music and they're going to come out with like mohawks and stuff. So she heard, the baby inside of Elizabeth heard the voice of Mary and recognized that is Jesus's mom's voice. and he started jumping in for joy. I've never had anything jump like that inside of me. I mean, I've had Taco Bell, so probably a very similar kind of feeling, but there's this.
Gotta be similar.
It's got to be similar because there's some real good jumping that happens after Taco Bell. So he literally jumps inside at hearing the voice of Mary. Jesus is not outside the womb. Not like Jesus is talking. He recognized the voice. So I'm telling you right now, blessed among women, highly favored, servant of God, laying herself as a bondservant underneath the authority of God and saying, let's do it. Let's go. I'm telling you, there's something special about Mary. And then we go to verse 45. Blessed is she who believed, for there will be a completion to those things which were told her by the Lord. So Elizabeth says, Mary, you are blessed. And furthermore, you believed that it was going to happen, and it's happening. And there will be a completion to those things which were told you by the Lord. So flip over with me to Hebrews. Hebrews is kind of near the back, couple of books in. Hebrews chapter 7. I know we're kind of hopping around, but I want you to get connections to the context of what these words mean, because that's important. Hebrews 7, go down here to verse 11. Or I'm going to go above 11. I'm going to say, go to verse 9, 7:9. Hebrews 7:9. One might say that Levi also, who receives tithes and pays tithes through Abraham. So remember, Levi was the line of the priests, the order of Aaron. Okay, now Aaron's lineage has fallen off. Okay, 7 verse 9, Hebrews 7:9. One might say that Levi also, who receives tithes, Levi there is just the generic term for the people who work in the temple process. They're the pastors and priests and deacons and elders of the church at the time. Yeah. Yes. And that's, so when we did our 14 Apostles study last summer, we talked, it's been a while now, but we talked about the fact that Levi doesn't go by his given name. He goes by his business name, Matthew, because Matthew is a Greek sounding name, because what is he doing? He's collecting taxes from his own people. So I don't want to be associated with my own people. I want to be associated with the Roman people using a Greek name because they won't hate me as much, maybe. And furthermore, when you dive deeper into that, Levi probably means that he was also from the line of Levi. And what was he supposed to be doing? Not collecting taxes. He's supposed to be collecting tithes in the church. He's not supposed to be taking out the power of man over the nation of Israel. He's supposed to be expounding and being the power of God to the people in the priesthood. So he has completely turned his back on that. Now Jesus, of course, flips the narrative around. So that's Levi and Matthew. But yeah, great catch. So in the order of the group of the Levites, they're the ones who received tithes, paid tithes through through Abraham. So they're like saying, yeah, that's their role in this thing, is to do this through for Abraham. That means through Abraham and all his people, right? The Jews. For he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met Abraham. We talked about this back in our Genesis study, I don't know, 3 years ago now. And we talked about Melchizedek just kind of shows up on the scene. And he's in Salem, which was the precursor to Jerusalem. And to celebrate Abram's win, he meets him and says, hey, let's celebrate. Here's some bread. Here's some wine. Let's celebrate. What does that sound like? A party. That sounds like communion, right? That sounds like communion. And so literally this Melchizedek, this mysterious priest who was king and high priest over Salem, precursor to Jerusalem, so we're talking old roots, celebrates the victory with Abram and says, here's some bread, here's some wine. And Abram in response says, man, that was so amazing, and I feel so enlightened because of this. Here's 10% of the spoils. Just keep it. It's a tithe. Take it. So when you see in verse 9 here, it's talking about that the Levi receives tithes and paid tithes through Abraham. That's what they're talking about. For he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met Abraham. That means it was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So he was not born yet, but he's in that lineage. Verse 11 now. If perfection were attained through the Levitical priesthood, or through it the people received the law, what further need was there that another priest would rise in the order of Melchizedek? So they said Jesus became a new priest in the order of Melchizedek, which means Melchizedek was here, kind of fell off the scene. Levi and Aaron and that whole lineage came and then fell off the scene. And then Melchizedek, somebody from that order comes back. It's Jesus. Likely, Melchizedek is actually Jesus in his pre-baby form. That's what we call a Christophany. It's like an epiphany. It's like a Christophany. Like, oh, that's meant to represent Jesus in the book of Genesis. So we see that. Now it says here, if perfection were attained through the Levitical priesthood. So that means if, there's basically two main ways that you can go to heaven. Be perfect 100% for your entire life, or have faith in Jesus Christ. So which one can you do? It's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious, right? So if perfection were attained through the Levitical priesthood, then what further would it need to have somebody from the order of Melchizedek, right? We're not going to go through Hebrews. This is not Hebrew studies. Rather than established in the order of Aaron. For a change of priesthood necessitates to change the law. We have a new priest. He's Jesus, and he's changing the new covenant. Okay, so we're not going to go to that. But that word, if perfection were attained, that word attained there is also the same word, telepsis, which is being used in Luke 1:45. So I'm sorry, skip back over to Luke 1:45. Says, blessed is she who believed, Mary, who believed the angel, for there will be a completion to those things. That's telepsis, and it means perfect consummation and fulfillment. Perfect consummation and fulfillment. So we see here that you believed, and there will be a perfect consummation and fulfillment to those things which were told you by the Lord. Mary, it's pretty awesome. For me, I don't worship her. I don't make images of her or whatever. But man, I think we need to probably put her back into this mindset of she's an important character in the story of Jesus, particularly around his birth, around Christmas time, where we're studying Mary. I think it's important when we're looking at Mary and Joseph and Jesus and all that kind of stuff. She wasn't just simply the human submarine that was carrying around a sailor in there for 9 months and then releasing him. Like, she was actually integral part of the story. She had faith. Was she perfect? I don't think the Bible points to that. I don't think the Bible points to that. Because she said to God, what? I submit myself to you. If she was perfect, she wouldn't need to submit herself to anybody. I submit myself to you. Let your will be done. So Mary, blessed among women. Thanks for coming. See you next week.